Hello and welcome back to the Kasana Health channel, the best health information channel for people with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. Today is a really special video. It's an interview with one of you, the viewers of my channel. And hopefully this will be the first of what will become a series of similar interviews. The man you're about to meet in today's video was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes less than 6 months ago. And we connected just a few weeks ago when he replied to one of my email newsletters and shared that he was grateful for the wake-up call that his diagnosis had given him. He was grateful. I loved his positive attitude so much that I decided to ask him to do this recorded interview with me so that he could share his story and inspire others going through a similar situation. And honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better person to interview. His story is truly inspiring, and I know that anyone who's been diagnosed with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes will find it helpful. He shares what he did to take control of his health and lower his A1C in just 3 months. I know it's a long one, but stick around till the end because you will learn so much from him. He talks about how he created new habits, what health information he tracks, what he prioritizes other than nutrition and exercise, and how he exercises despite the pandemic and the fact that he now works from home. Even I learned something new when he shared the type of workout that he does. Anyway, I hope you find his story as inspiring as I did. Here it is. So thanks for joining, Bill. I'm really happy to have this little chat with you. Let's start by you introducing yourself a little bit. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Bill Boston. I am a software consultant. I work for a company actually that's based in Toronto, but we do software for the public transit industry. So all of the applications that kind of manage activity on and location of vehicles, traveler information, maintenance software, all of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so I've been in technology for many years. I grew up in Chicago, so I'm a native of the Midwest. Moved west over time, and now my wife and I live in just outside of Spokane, Washington. We've been in this area for about, 8 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a little bit about my general background.
Beautiful. I love the West Coast. I mean, I've always been on the East Coast, but I think it's a beautiful area.
Yeah, we lived in California for probably close to 2 decades, and so now being in a part of the Northwest where there's quite a bit of snow and cold sometimes.
Yeah.
This time of year, I miss California a little bit, but
I'm sure. I'm sure you do. I always associate the Northwest with I'm in Montreal for those who don't know on this channel, but so yeah, Canada to me it's like BC. So I associate wherever you are with BC weather, which for us is beautiful.
Sure.
We have much harsher winters over here. So I understand that.
Actually where we are, we're not very far from the BC border.
Yeah. Nice. All right, Bill. So tell us, obviously I'm having this chat with you a little bit because I wanted to hear more about your type 2 diagnosis, type 2 diabetes diagnosis. And yeah, so I basically heard back from you after I sent this email about a friend of mine who was talking to me about her husband getting diagnosed and how it ended up being kind of a wake-up call for them. And in a sense, they were kind of grateful. And I shared this story and you replied by sharing that you had similar feelings. And I really appreciated your attitude and the way you explained all that. So let's talk a bit about when this diagnosis happened for you and what happened from there.
Sure. So really this all started probably back around Labor Day US. I guess that's the same for you guys.
Yeah.
It's beginning of September.
Yep.
I started, it was actually kind of odd. I started noticing I had some upper abdominal discomfort, nothing like chest pains or anything like that. It was more like a burning, stinging sensation. So, and it had been persistent. It started showing up around then, maybe kept going for a couple weeks or more. And I was concerned about it. So, and at one point it was a weekend and it was starting to burn more so than I felt comfortable with. And so I went to the urgent care. I didn't have 2 reasons. One, I wanted to be seen fairly quickly. I also didn't have a primary care at that time. And so they ran some tests, kind of eliminated some immediate, like really bad things.
Yeah, that's what they do.
The doctor there actually thought it could be potentially some type of ulcer. We did some follow-up stuff, but they also suggested I follow up with my regular physician. And so that was a time I really needed to actually go ahead and choose a primary.
And find one, yeah.
Indeed. So I found one, made an appointment, went to that provider. We ran some other stuff. We also thought it could be something muscular. There were a few different kinds of things. But during the course of establishing my primary, she ran a bunch of different labs and tests, just things that is part of a normal patient.
Regular checkup. Yeah.
Exactly. And so the blood work that she did at the time, it came back, and I remember her assistant called and gave the lab results and said, yeah, the doctor would like you to make a follow-up appointment within the next month. And the lab results had some problems in them. One was the A1C was at 7.4.
Mm-hmm.
My glucose, my fasting glucose was at 168. My total cholesterol was 250. LDL was 167. Triglycerides were 206. The one positive thing, my HDL was 42, so that wasn't too bad. But there were a number of things that were markers of some health challenges, and so we had a follow-up appointment. We kind of talked through this, and years ago I had some blood work done, and I had an elevated A1C at that point. I don't remember what that was, and I hadn't really, at that point, I was trying to get it managed by just changing diet and I hadn't really ever followed up on it. And years had passed, and so now this is the first time I was actually back at the doctor. Maybe in the back of my mind I was even trying to avoid dealing with it. I was like, okay, if I just
ignore it. So if you ignore it, it's not there, and totally fine. Yeah.
So my doctor had a frank discussion with me about what the impact of this was. Over in more recent years, I've also heard and seen a lot of the impact that type 2 diabetes has actually had on various people.
Mm-hmm.
Around the same time, my birthday was in the fall. I just turned 61, and we're getting close to the point where my wife and I are starting to think, okay, we need to start getting retirement plans in order. We don't know how soon we're going to do that.
Yeah.
But, we might want to start thinking about what we need to do. And you go to these calculators about how much money do you need. Well, one of the factors is, well, how long are you going to live? And you don't think about that until you start getting to this age. How much longer do I have to live? And the other thing that goes with that, well, what's your quality of life going to be during that time, and what are the things you want to do during that retirement? And that combined with the diagnosis was a little bit of a wake up. My father, when he was 57, had a massive stroke, and it paralyzed his right side, and his speech was severely impacted, so he couldn't really communicate verbally. And so but he lived another 20 years. He lived from 57 to 70. During that time, my mother actually took care of him most of the time. And so, what were normally would have been the age where my parents would have been getting ready for and enjoying their retirement, both of their lives had a huge impact because of this big health factor. So I knew how things can be impacted and lives can change based on that. So I'm kind of like thinking, now I've got, I've always tried to watch my blood pressure.
Okay.
As of, the fact that he had the stroke, but The other things like diabetes and, the cholesterol level, I hadn't been paying that much attention to. And I'm thinking, we want to enjoy our retirement. We want to be active during our retirement, and don't want to have something big,
like that
all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm guessing your parents didn't have diabetes or weren't diagnosed with diabetes from it, so it was mainly high blood pressure.
I'm not sure, and I was fairly young at the time. So my father might have had some other conditions. I know now they talk about metabolic syndrome where there are multiple factors sometimes, and so he could have also had elevated glucose readings as well. That I don't know. My mother had some other health challenges. She had actually had polio as a youth, and while that had gone away, later years she had what was something called post-polio syndrome, where some of the impact on the body and the nervous system comes back. So she had some other health factors around that. My suspicion is, we never really talked about it, but my suspicion is she probably also had some elevated glucose. She had picked up weight, and also when I look back on what we think now, what we thought then were good eating habits. We've learned more. I remember she used to have lots of fruit juices and I remember white bread was a lot in her diet and things like that.
Yeah.
I would tend to guess that her
possibly high, but maybe never addressed.
Correct.
Yeah. That's the thing about metabolic syndrome and all those health factors that could potentially come from genetics. Honestly, I look at you and I know your age because you told me, but otherwise I would have easily given you at least like 10 years less. You're not overweight. So like the diagnosis.
Thanks to the camera.
You're not the picture of what people initially see as like someone who has type 2 diabetes. Tell us a bit more what happened. So you were told your A1C was 7.45, what you said?
Yes, it's up 7.4.
So that was in November. So
sure.
How did your, doctor announce it? How did you take it? Talk to us a bit about what happened from then on.
Sure. So, so my doctor basically talked to me about the impact of those numbers, what normal ranges are, and the kinds of complications that can happen as a result of the elevated blood sugar. Likewise, the lipids, the cholesterol, and, those things together indicating the metabolic syndrome. So, she indicated that there are medicines that are used to treat those. I said that that's not my first preference, and she also mentioned that she's not a pill pusher. So and that's I liked is that she's somebody who was kind of interested in lifestyle changes first.
Yeah.
So I said that's ideally that's what I'd like to do. She did say that Metformin. She strongly urged
recommended
the Metformin.
Yeah.
So we started on a lower dosage of Metformin, the 500 release.
Okay.
So I started on that, but then also we talked about just some general lifestyle changes, things like more movement or exercise, and then just kind of watching the carbohydrates and that kind of thing. I don't know how much COVID has had an impact on, those numbers, but I do know before that, a year ago, March, up until that point, I had been traveling quite a bit, moving quite a bit. I'm on the road quite a bit for work, traveling with customers. I do work out of home when I'm not traveling with customers, but it had been a very, very busy year. And then it all just kind of came grinding to a halt. So you see my work world right now is
This is it.
here. And
Yeah.
so I do realize that I had stopped movement quite a bit. Just even like, even with travel, just the walking through the airports and kind of back and forth to different hotels, customers and all that kind of stuff, I had a lot more movement built into my daily life. So I knew it was going to be a challenge to try and incorporate that back in.
Absolutely.
The food thing, I've always known what are good foods. I didn't feel I needed to change or learn more about nutrition. I think it was trying to get myself to be disciplined about nutrition.
Okay.
And make my environment work for me to support that.
Okay.
And so that's, one of the things I knew was going to be a challenge. Luckily, so I guess a couple of things. I mean, luckily we did have, our insurance was such that we had some good programs. So I kind of looked, there's some online support things, particularly for like diabetes health.
Yeah.
And some of them include some counseling for nutrition, just general motivation, fitness, etc. So I signed up for some of those. But just kind of slowly started trying to make changes. I won't I won't say that it was an overnight thing, because it's been an ongoing exercise of having to tweak little things here and there. Like for the food thing, I'm a big snacker.
Yeah.
I've been somebody who eats a lot of sweets, so I'm not one of the people that have to worry about like sugary beverages or
Okay.
like sugar in the coffee or desserts, but savory snacks, these salty things, crackers, things like that, I will be drawn to. I crave those. I snack a lot. And, as you learn over time, sugar doesn't come just in the form of the sweet stuff.
Pure sugar. Yeah.
Refine things. And
Yeah.
so, making myself stay away from those kinds of things, I knew was going to be a challenge. So you have to go through this exercise of trying to figure out, okay, what can you do to substitute or have a surrogate for those
Exactly.
times when you have the salty or savory cravings. So having to find stuff like that. But you start doing little things. So like the other thing is I live in a house where I'm not the only member. My wife is here, and my mother-in-law lives with us, and at the moment my brother-in-law is staying with us. Well, he recovers through some health issues, and so everyone else tends to be a little bit more snack oriented, and so our kitchen counter has quite a bit of available. So I have to kind of put the blinders on, or else to avoid those things.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, I just kind of listen to. So the other thing, I listened to a lot of stuff on, and again, this was part of this wake up call. I came up with the doctor. What am I going to do? So I started listening to more YouTube videos, more channels that kind of talk about this. Because again, I was motivated to try and get things in order, and I didn't want to. When I went back to the doctor, because we set up a follow up for 3 months later.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have to either increase the
dose of metformin. Yeah.
I didn't want to, because we also talked about the elevated cholesterol level. I didn't want to go on statins. I'd been on statins a few years back, and I had some muscle problems.
Common side effect. Yes.
And she said that there have been some advances in some of those since that time. But I said, hey, if we can turn things around, can we hold off on those? And she said sure. So
there you go.
Yeah, and so I was really motivated to try and get things to turn in the right direction. So yeah, so I started trying to avoid snacking. I came up with um, ways to have healthier things. So things like olives. I like olives a lot. They're kind of a somewhat salty, savory.
Yes.
Pickles. I like those crunchy. I don't know if you guys have the plan, but the
Yeah.
Clausen pickles. So those
Yeah,
are
absolutely.
things. So I tried to have more of that kind of thing around and available. Nuts. Trying to have those handy, although not so much because those are easy to get addicted and eat too much.
Yeah.
Calorie dense.
Yeah.
So doing that. So that was one piece. The other was to try and stop. I kept listening to videos, reading things. Stopping eating relatively early in the evening was another thing I kept hearing over and over. If you can keep late night or late evening snacking to a minimum, that's also really helpful. So I tried to consciously, once dinner was over, avoid going back for anything else. Occasionally I might go for something small, but really tried to minimize that. The other thing was I was also trying to work on improving my quality of sleep.
Nice.
I was hearing that sleep and stress from lack of sleep can also have an impact. Cortisol
Absolutely.
was a term I had never really heard that much of before, but now as I started to listen
Ever since, yeah.
started hearing more about cortisol, lack of sleep, or just stress in general and its impact on that. I had been having challenges with sleep. I mean, sometimes work can be very stressful. I work on job where we're very deadline driven, and so sometimes things will come up urgently. And so if I wake up during the night or wake up early, my mind starts to race and think about what I need to do, and then I get up. And so I was having some challenges with waking up during the night and then just not being able to get back to sleep. So
Yeah.
I started trying to do things to tweak that. And so I read, late night eating can have an impact on your sleep quality. So I tried to minimize that. Just more relaxation in general, and I got to say, the sleep thing is still still a little bit of a challenge, but it's one of the things I'm starting to try and tweak more.
I love that. Yeah, so important, and many people don't necessarily realize, but absolutely, you're right. Relaxation, sleep, humongous impact on all our hormonal balance, right? Which is all part of the diabetes hormonal balance as well. So my neighbor's alarm seems to have gone off.
The other thing that really helped, I went out and got one of these fitness trackers, and I didn't get a smartwatch. I got the Fitbit. I got one of the couple ones that are truly just the fitness tracker. I didn't want anything that was going to draw me in or suck me into too much activity. I wanted something that was going to more keep track of me. So I wanted to know more about like my sleep and sleep patterns.
Nice. Yeah.
I also wanted to, I knew I hadn't been moving enough, especially in this COVID world. And so I wanted something that was going to just kind of keep me honest about moving when I need.
So what did you discover? How much do you usually move in an average day?
I had not been moving very much at all. At that point, I think the minimum setting on there is like trying to shoot for 5,000 steps a day, and I was well below that. I mean, I was probably in the 2,000, 2,500 maybe or whatever when I first started doing that.
Yeah,
I've slowly worked up, and now I'm probably averaging. I'm looking up. I've got a whiteboard where I keep track of my.
Oh, okay, nice. I like that. Yeah.
But now I'm trying to get a minimum of 7,000 in a day and trying to go for 10,000. It's really tricky in an environment where we've had a lot of winter here. So in the fall, I had been getting out a little bit and doing trying to do some walking in the morning, but then when it gets snowy and cold and icy, I'm just not motivated to do it.
Yeah.
So then I had to again come up with some clever strategies to get around that. Two things. One is this thing when it's 10 minutes before the hour and I haven't gotten a minimum of 250 steps in,
it buzzes. Yeah.
So I'll get up and you know, I'll do nothing other than just kind of like, you know, walk in
place,
or we're in a 2-level house, or so sometimes I'll just do a couple of quick flights of steps, and then you know, kind of the walking in place, that's really helpful. The other thing is that I realize now I spend a lot of time in Zoom and Zoom meetings. There's no reason why, particularly if I'm in a meeting where you know, we don't have the cameras on or others are talking or in discussion, why I can't be standing and walking in place during those meetings. So
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that really helps kind of get the numbers along quite a bit. And the other thing is I found this exercise. I don't know if you're familiar with something called a nitric oxide dump.
No.
It's something I found, and now a couple of people, actually 2 or 3 people I follow online, have mentioned. I can send you the link information in case you want to.
Yeah, please do. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, it's something you can do. It's a brief, high intensity interval training exercise that you can do 2 or 3 times a day. And it's basically a repetition of 4 exercises. And the whole goal of it, I guess we have something, unfortunately, I'm not the scientist who knows as much about this, but a couple of doctors who I found online, there's this nitric oxide molecule that just really helps relax the blood vessels. It helps kind of your VO2 max, you know, a few other really positive things.
Nice.
Nothing else. It just forces you to move, and you do it 2 or 3 times a day. It's a repetition of 4 movements, and you do 10, and you work up to 20 of them if you can, just kind of all in succession. But it's squats. So I do like, you know, squats. I do 10 arm raises. I do 10 kind of standing jumping jacks. I don't actually leave the ground. I just
without jumping
jacks, and then 10 lifts.
Okay.
And it doesn't sound like much, but when you do them in succession, you do those 4 in succession, and then you do 3 sets of those right together. So the whole thing takes about 4 minutes, but it actually ends up being a really good kind of winding workup. And the key to this is that you only breathe through your nose. So while you're doing this, and apparently the nitric oxide is actually released through the nasal cavity.
Interesting. You don't physically sweat when you do that, do you?
No. But I do breathe. I can tell I'm breathing.
You're breathing faster.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's an interesting exercise. So I do that 2 or 3 times a day. So between that and the walking in place, so some hours I'll do one of those, and you're supposed to have at least 2 hours between them.
Okay.
For oxide to build up again. So I do that 2 or 3 times a day. I do the walking in place, kind of the stairs if needed, and if it's a nice day, you know, get out for a walk. If I can, if it's lunchtime or between meetings, etc. If the weather's nice enough, you know, we haven't had a huge amount of great weather, but recently it's broken a little bit. Get out and just do. I mean, there's a short loop. I call it my short loop, but I just walk down. We're pretty close to the river here, so I'll walk down to the river, kind of go around, and then kind of come to the backside of where we live and back. And it's probably a 10 to 12 minute walk. So I'll do that if I can, or you know, if the dog needs to go out back, I'll go out back and play. He's got a ball and he's got a frisbee a little bit. Nice. So those things are enough to get me my 7,000 step minimum. That's what I'm shooting for right now. I mean, ideally 10,000 is better. There's a trail near here. If I wanted to, I have to get a little bit more walking in. So the weekends, that's easier to do. Not as much during the week.
Yeah. I love this. Like I said, I didn't know that much about your lifestyle habits and all that before today, but I love that you've already pinpointed so many like super useful tips for anyone who's going to be watching this. And I love the fact that you always talk about gradually increasing and making little changes. I find it, I mean, it's so amazing. And yeah, most people just think that they can change everything in one day. But the best way to do things is to start to incorporate, actually to watch the baseline. Like, what am I at right now and what can I do differently a little better tomorrow? And I love that you've just said that super naturally, like it was a given for you, but it's amazing. It's like one of the most useful pieces of advice that people can remember from this is that you do things gradually, you improve on them a little bit every single day. And the same way you said you went gradually up with your steps, you started adding your little exercises in, even just 4 minutes, but like I'm assuming you feel great after you do them, which is why you keep repeating it so many times in a day. I mean,
no, it makes a difference, and so it's the other thing. It's like trying to form a habit, and these weren't things that I like suddenly realized that they were great ideas. It's the result of years of having. I mean, I've actually struggled. I mean, I don't look like it at the moment, but off and on over the years, I've struggled with weight, and so I know the impact of trying to go too gung-ho with too many things at once. And the other thing I've learned over time is that it's just going to take a while. You have to be patient. And so the one habit of the last decade that I've probably been the most consistent with, whether it's been good for good or bad, is I record my weight in the morning. I use the MyFitnessPal app. I used to track it. I used to track food details and all that kind of stuff in there. And back when I was lived elsewhere, I was going to a spin class regularly, so I tracked all my gym activity. Don't do any of that anymore in that app. I just track my weight in that one, but I actually have a graph over time of the last 10 years of kind of when things have gone well, when they haven't, and I can see that. And so that's like habit number one. So, and I even actually recorded on my whiteboard. My whiteboard has kind of a 2-week running capture of my weight. And the reason is I've got, when I'm trying to form these little habits, I put a new one up there and I put a column for it on my whiteboard. And I know that even if I do just like a little bit of that thing, if I keep like a green check mark of the days I've done it and the X for the days I haven't, it's a motivator, and it's a visual. And I don't really explain to anybody else in the household kind of what I'm doing, but you can figure it out pretty easily. And it's sort of accountability thing. So I need it because I know when I won't adhere to things. And so, but yeah, I've learned that little steps just make a huge difference. And
they add up.
Point is a habit, then you can.
Beautiful, beautiful. So tell me though, I know you so clearly you left to track data and information about your health, but did you start tracking your blood sugar levels after you got diagnosed?
Yeah. So that wasn't until later. So I started. I got the Fitbit, and I had started doing kind of tracking my sleep and that kind of thing. So I wanted to tweak that through one of our insurance kind of care programs for diabetes management. We have access to a nurse. So the nurse I had been working with said, hey, have you talked to your doctor about getting a glucometer? It would be really interesting for you to know kind of what your daily blood sugar
readings are. Yeah.
No, I haven't. But next time I go, I can do that. I can reach out and find out. She said, yeah, it might even be covered by your insurance. Well, interestingly enough, within a week or two after that, we actually, and this was just coincidental, through our work insurance, got access to a new program, and that provided us with for anybody who was interested in signing up for it, access to a glucometer and test strips and all that. And I'm like, wow, that's great. Sign me up. And so, because I was interested, because I didn't want to go back and the first time I knew exactly what had changed was, next time I go for A1C, and if it's in, I don't know, I wouldn't have known if anything was improving or not. So,
yeah.
That was back in January at some point, maybe mid to late January. And so I signed up. A few days later, the little kit arrived with the strips and the whole setup. And it's actually a really, really cool thing because you do it, you take the blood sugar and it automatically uploads it to the cloud, and you've got access to it via an app and via a website. And so all of a sudden it was like fascinating to me.
Yeah, it really is. That's what I feel about it, at least.
Well, I had no idea kind of how any of it was going to pan out. And so I started taking it, and this is before I'd really talked to my doctor about it, because she hadn't even suggested one initially. And I knew I'd see her for an A1C test within like another month after that. And so I started taking it. I wasn't sure how often. So I started taking it kind of before and after meals. I started taking it, a few times in the morning, and just sort of learned some fascinating things about how it works. It's because of that I came across, and this may even be how I came across the Kasana video. I was trying, because I saw my numbers were generally pretty good, but then I think I got up and took it first thing in the morning one morning, and I knew that I hadn't eaten late, so I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be a fasting number. It's going to be great. And it was like 130, 140 something, and I'm thinking that's fasting. And so then I started Googling, high morning blood sugar, and then I find out that there's this whole dawn phenomena or dawn effect, and I'm like, what? And so I start reading more about it, and so that was like yet another kind of wake up. It was an unexpected phenomena, and then I find out that it's a pretty normal thing, even in people who aren't type 2 diabetes. It's not as
exactly,
but it's the body preparing itself for the day.
Which can be more pronounced for people who do have diabetes, but yes, exactly.
Yeah, so that was surprising to me, and so I became really interested in so how early does this actually start to impact? So I started taking it earlier. It started to get more dots in my plot chart, so to speak.
Okay, yeah.
I had more of a pattern. You have some people whose blood glucose goes up and down. Mine more kind of raised, a little bit through the morning, and then would taper off over the course of the day. And I think based on the things that I was eating, it wouldn't even rise that much after meals, because I do.
Okay.
I'm on probably. I'm not on what I would call keto, but I am on a pretty low carbohydrate diet. I eat carbs.
Lower carb.
Carbs. But I don't, and I don't consciously pay attention to my macros or anything like that. But I just try and avoid, refined things, white bread, potato, white rice. I'll have some grains. I'll have some breads or whole grain crackers, those kinds of things, but I minimize them. So I didn't see much in the way of spikes. So I had this pattern kind of going up and then trailing off. But then, just learning how certain individual things impacted it would be a surprise. I have this kind of fairly good pattern, and then I've got this one mark that's kind of way up there in the middle of the afternoon. I'm like, and I know because when I record my blood sugar, the app has a place that you can record what the meal was, the last meal was.
Yeah.
And I remember it was a day I had some with lunch, like some cheese and some crackers, and I was thinking, wow, did crackers, and that was the one key thing that I don't typically have like midday like that. Did that really spike it like that? And it's the thing that had to have had that impact. And so,
Yeah, potentially if it was taken on its own without any protein or fat source at the same time. Yeah, very possible.
The other thing that was kind of a shocker to me, because again it's counterintuitive, was in evening after work, and I don't remember what else I'd had around the time, but I had a couple glasses of red wine, and I bet you that's going to send the blood sugar up. And so I took it right after, and I'm thinking, well, what's it going to be? And I look at it, and I think the last time I had taken it prior to that, it had been like around 100, 101, and now I had a couple glasses of wine, and now it was 82. And I'm like, what? It went down? And so then I started doing a little bit more research and found that alcohol can actually have an impact for up to 24 hours.
24 hours.
Drives it down.
Well, down on the spot, especially if you're not taking any, liquor, well, not liquors, but cocktails that are full of sugar, but down otherwise alcohol. And then in the next 24 hours, you don't really know, it might just skyrocket at some point. But isn't that interesting? I love that you're experimenting with things.
Yeah. So those were all kind of learning things. So I'm still continuing to try and figure it out. There are some time gaps that I really want to know more about, but I've been working on, so I haven't felt the need to like set my alarm and wake up during the middle of the night to deal with it. But I don't really know. The earliest I've been taking them is like right after I get up, and so that's somewhere in the 5 to 6 a.m. range. But most of the time, my first readings are in the 7 to 8 range. So 6, I don't know very well. Also, I try and go to bed by 10:30. So my latest readings tend to be somewhere in the 9 to 10-ish range. And even those I haven't done a lot of, but I'd really like to know, does it continue to trail off for, at least for me personally, as the evening continues to get later and I go to sleep. So I'd like to know more about that.
So I'm assuming you test multiple times a day. Like how many times a day does that end up being to, satisfy your curiosity?
Well, when I first started, I'd say I was probably doing it 6 times a day. When I first got up, and I was doing it before and after meal. And then I started kind of shifting it around. The app kind of shows it different times over the course of the day. So then I started trying to fill in the dots. If I found time slots that I wasn't really routinely testing, I'd start trying.
You'd see a new,
So now I'd say it's probably 2 to 3 times a day. I was doing quite more in the beginning. I didn't know how all of this was going to translate, because this was all probably in a 1 month period between when I got the glucometer to when I went back to the doctor and did the A1C. And so I didn't know how any of it was going to translate, because I know the A1C is over a 3-month period, or it's the average over a 3-month period. So when I went back to the doctor, and they took the test, and she came in, and and the very first words she said were, "What did you do?" and
I love it. What was it?
I said, I said, "Well, what did I do wrong?" I know, but she's like, "No, it's really good." She said it's down to 5.9, and so she wanted to have a conversation about kind of what I had done, and so we had a lot of discussion, kind of very very similar to what we're having today.
Nice.
But one of the things was that the A1C helped prove out is that the numbers that I had been finding in the last month were actually, trending that way in general, because the A1C was better gauge over time. And
exactly. Nice.
I guess after that, I wasn't doing it quite as frequently. I mean, I asked her how often, and she said, from her perspective, with the A1C being really good, if I even was doing it like a couple days a week, like 2 or 3 times just to get a gauge, that was probably fine. And so, I dialed it back, but I'm still trying to, I'm still really curious. So I'm still trying to periodically fill in the dots.
Yeah.
Try new foods or things like that. I'm just kind of curious, or meal types. I'm just really curious of the impact.
So that's something that I find really interesting, because in the medical community, I mean, as a pharmacist, I see patients coming in. I know what their doctor tells them because I ask them, or I'll be the one handing them the glucose meter and explaining how to use it. And most of the time, the general recommendation in any case for people who are just on metformin, or not even, in some cases, not even taking metformin, is max once a day, and 3-4 times a week is considered good. But I'm always someone who's going to encourage curiosity, because that's the whole point. Like, if you are testing at home, and obviously it's, for most people, it's not fun to prick your finger, but how do you make it fun, or fun in quotes, is by being curious and seeing if, like, you eat new foods, you want to know how it's affecting you, well, test. Like, that's the best way. So I encourage people to test more than once a day, but most of the time I'm like, the answer that I get back is, I don't want to test more than once a day. It's not something that I want to do. But when it comes from a place of curiosity and, wanting to have more knowledge and bringing change to those results, I feel like it becomes a given.
Sure.
And like, I'm not diabetic, but I talk to people who have diabetes a lot, and I love counseling people on diabetes. And I have my glucose meter. I test at home just because I want to see that whatever I'm advising to people, is it doable? Does it make sense? Do I learn anything for myself? And I do it myself too. Like, if I have pizza, I want to know how my blood sugar goes after. I mean, I get laughed at by my boyfriend, but it's all good. I want to know what happens 1 hour later. Is it higher an hour or 2 hours later? Anyway, there's a lot we can learn, even whether we have diabetes or not. And when you do, that's when the most impact comes. And I love that you just bring all of that out.
Sure. And actually, you raise a good point, because that's one of the things I'm trying to tweak right now. Like, what is the optimal time for testing after a meal? I've read that it's 1 to 2 hours is.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I was like, okay, 1 to 2 hours. I'm going to do it exactly 90 minutes. That's exactly. But then I read, okay, so is it after I take my first bite? Is it after I finish? And then I've read people say, okay, they find that theirs is impacted, more quickly, or some people say it takes longer. So, I'm trying to fine tune and see, like, what's the peak rise after I've started a meal, to capture that elevated blood glucose. And so, I could probably drive myself crazy, in my poor little fingertips as well. But
exactly.
Yeah,
it does drive ourselves crazy. But I mean, the reality is it's 1 to 2 hours, because when we eat meals, usually it's made of complex foods that have, different absorption times. But if you were to drink just a glass of orange juice, you could probably test 15 minutes later and it will be higher. So depending on what you eat, yes, it's variable person to person, but obviously variable depending on what you ate during your meal or your snack. So yeah, but it is interesting to see if it's an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours, sometimes depending on what you ate. So the impact is definitely variable. It's always interesting to know when that happens.
One other thing I wanted to go back and mention, because I just thought about it.
Yes.
Again, when you're talking about body type, and you wouldn't necessarily know in my weight. The one thing that I have had a challenge on, and I know this is also an indicator of not only metabolic syndrome and some challenges, but also potentially more serious issues around weight, is that I tend to carry all my weight in my belly. And where I tend to, so I don't show as much above or elsewhere.
Yeah.
That was the other part of the wake up call, is that I knew I was kind of expanding in that area, and that visceral fat and issues around that can be really, really serious. And so that was the other piece I meant to mention earlier when we were talking about that.
No, you're absolutely right to bring that up for sure. I mean, weight is important to look at, but it shouldn't be. Oftentimes, it's made as the main focus for people with diabetes, but it shouldn't be. Just like BMI, sometimes it can be a little misleading. Hip to waist ratio is a bit more important because, as you said, it's a more representative visceral fat, so that's always more important to look at. But yeah, you're definitely right. I encourage people to not focus on weight. I mean, I love that you track weight every day, but that's it could be harder, for psychological reasons for certain people. I encourage people to look at blood sugar levels, and I say that let weight loss be a happy side effect of everything else that you do, but let's not focus on weight because you can lose weight in a very unhealthy manner as well, and that's not the point. But yeah, absolutely, you're right. Weight is not something to focus on, and there's more things to look at, and things that we can't see either on a Zoom call or to the naked eye.
Sure. So the one other thing that I also have been trying to incorporate more too, and I don't know that it's even really as formal. I just do this a little bit more in general now. So in addition to kind of reducing the whole carb piece, I'm not intermittent fasting per se.
Mm-hmm.
I'd actually call it, because I know that there's all kinds of different ways that you.
Yeah.
But I am doing more time restricted eating. So
okay.
I eat past a certain time. I'm trying to keep from doing like late evening eating.
Yeah.
And I usually don't start. I usually have eat probably in the 10:30 to 11ish range. So I've got probably an 8 to 10 hour.
8 to 10, yeah, so 12
Yeah,
to 14
I'm
hours.
doing probably more like 8 and 16.
Okay.
But again, I'm not strict about it.
Yeah.
I when I start getting a little hungrier in the morning, I'll eat. So that often is like in the 10:30 to 11ish range.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if I wake up, if I'm hungry and I feel like having something early, I'll have it.
Yeah.
And then again, the evening, for just multiple reasons, I don't try and eat too late. Either just I know its impact in general, but also its impact on sleep, and digestion, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I like that you're not too strict about it, because I think it's important to stay aware of our hunger and satiety cues, especially in the morning. If you're not hungry and you're not eating because you're not hungry, then it's fine. Your blood sugar is controlled. You're all good. You have energy to start your day. But if you're not eating just to follow that time restricted diet, and you like mess up your whole technically hormonal balance and satiety cues, and you no longer know when you're actually hungry or when you're craving things, and I think things got complicated from there. But I like that you are staying aware of your hunger and eating based on that. So it's good not to be super strict, that's for sure. Also for late night snacking, that's always fantastic.
Well, the other thing, I mean, for me, the other problem is just like with my sleep challenges. I know, sometimes when I've awakened during the night, and that's when I have challenges, like trying to go back to sleep. But when I awaken, it can be from like reflux-like symptoms, and to me, I can almost always correlate that with like a late meal or
late meal, that's true. Digestion gets harder when you eat right before going to bed. Absolutely. I guess I would ask you at this point, what's the one thing that you wish you knew when you were first diagnosed that you discovered later? Is there like one thing that you wish you had learned about earlier? I mean, your journey kind of went pretty fast. From in 3 months, you already learned a lot, but is there one thing that you kind of wish you knew a bit more?
It's hard to say.
You're still learning.
Yeah, I'm still learning, and there's so many different things I think that are part of it. And there are things I still want to try and do. For instance, I still haven't gone back for a lipid panel. My doctor said wanted me to wait a little bit and then take a lipid panel like another month after I saw her. So that I'm actually due for that.
Okay.
So relative to all this, I don't know how my my cholesterol or triglycerides have changed. So I'd like to know more about the relationship of everything that I've been doing on the impact on that. But the other thing is, I've charted a little bit of like how I eat and how that has had an impact on blood sugar. But these other numbers, I want to see how, like, when I do exercise and when I have that, when that happens over the course of the day, how does that impact things, or my sleep? My app has given me a lot of information about like my average sleep time for a given week. How is that impacting things? So, I don't know if any one, just because I'm still learning, certainly, well, I'll say the one thing, actually two.
Yes.
Two. One is just general awareness. If you can, we talk about, there's all this talk about mindfulness, and I wish I knew more about mindfulness. And I know that's another thing that's a space that I think I really could benefit from. I haven't really done a very good job of trying to like meditate or be like mindful, and I know I could benefit from it so much.
No one does a good job at it, but everyone tries, and that's the point. But
but when I say mindfulness, I'm being aware of like choices I'm making at any given
yes.
And trying to make a good decision about it, given what I've learned. So trying to always have that awareness at the decision points. That's one piece. And now I've forgotten the other. It's what we talked about before. Little changes. Don't try and do too much at once. Try and find out what the good things are, and make them habits for yourself. And whatever it is, just try and be consistent at it, and then you can always build on it. And so my whiteboard has a number of different columns. When I'm trying to start something new, so I can just check it off, and if I even just do a little bit of it, then I figure I've checked it off for that day, and then eventually it'll be a habit, and then I can always build on that habit. So
beautiful. So I'm just going to mention for everyone here that when I first asked you by email if we could do this interview, your immediate response was yes, and the only request you had was that we do a follow-up call in 6 months to a year. So I think that's amazing. And I think we're going to set some goals together, because we will do this for sure. But I initially loved that you answered me that way in the first place.
That's the accountability piece, and that's a big thing. That's one thing. And with these apps and everything, like Fitbit, or whether it be we've got another tracker app that we use within our company and insurance and everything, and you can actually do these little social challenges. Who has the most steps, whatever, and it's that accountability, or even the whiteboard. I mean, it's a means of accountability. It's just one more motivator. So that was like my, okay, I don't want to come back, a year however long, much later, and like have everything go the other direction. I need to, stay on game.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So what goals are we setting? Because I mean, your A1C is already doing great. So what kind of goals did you want to set for like our next chat in, let's say 6 months? I mean, we're March now, so we can plan it for the summer. But what are you looking at?
I mean, I want to keep the A1C at least where it is or better. I'd like to, and I'd like to see that my cholesterol, my lipids, I guess is what you'd call that whole, the cholesterol, triglycerides, et cetera, see those just be better in general. And, I guess, the best gauge is just feeling good in general.
Yeah.
Do you feel good? Are you moving enough? Do you feel like you're active enough to do what you want to do? And while I feel better than I did in October, or I guess September was when this was really started. I know that there's still a ways to go.
Okay.
I'm still not as comfortable moving around as I'd like to be, and as active as I'd like to be. So.
Okay, perfect. I'll write those down as I rewatch this part. And and next, okay, so I guess we're in March, so that'll bring us, if we count 6 months, to September. So when we hang up, we'll just send each other emails and we'll set up a time for like September. But we're definitely going to do a follow-up because I really enjoyed this call. And yeah, like I'm going to mention in the beginning, we didn't have a pre-talk about how this was going to go. We didn't script anything. So this is everything that came out that you said was like super natural and unscripted, which is amazing. So we're going to do the same thing in 6 months and we'll see where you're at then. And honestly, like, you're my first interview, but it's going to be hard for people to top that for my next interviews. No, it's not a competition, but this is amazing. I love that you shared all of this with us. Was there anything else that you wanted to share that, I don't know, maybe I haven't asked you about, or that you want to add?
No, I just, I guess the one other thing I'll share, and this is really more kudos to you and to the folks out there like you. The other thing that I found is that this is something that you don't have to do on your own. I'm sure for other kinds of things, there are really good supportive communities out there. The type 2 diabetes community that's out there, the resources and the people and the Facebook groups and all that stuff are just so interesting and supportive, and I learned a huge amount from that. So kudos to you. Kudos for being in the pharmaceutical industry and wanting to help people make lifestyle changes rather than pushing meds. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always going to be, I guess, those who push meds, but a lot of us are also aware of, the impact that all these meds have. And I guess my main goal in all this is I want people to realize that meds, yes, they can be helpful. Yes, they can save lives, but they're also, especially for diabetes, sometimes they're a little bit of band-aids. Like, sure, they'll drop your blood sugar level now, but what are they doing for you in the long term? Are you dealing with the root cause of things? Those are super important things that any meds won't take care of for you. And that's what I want to encourage, because I see a lot of gaps in the healthcare system. I mean, I'm in Canada, and I'm sure there's a little difference between Canada and the US, but like, generally speaking, doctors don't necessarily always have the time to explain everything that needs to be explained around a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. It's a heavy diagnosis. There's a lot to learn. And like you said, you're still, doing a lot of research and reading things and listening to things. And while not everyone has that curiosity, it's still important that we, the medical community at least, does a little bit of that. And we might not have the time to do it in our official jobs, but that's why I give myself permission to do it on social media, things that can be used outside of my day-to-day work. So yes, and it's true, the communities are beautiful. It's crazy how people come together to help each other. So that's always amazing. For anyone watching this, obviously you are not alone. Just like you have realized that very quickly about the community, it's super important not to do this fight alone. So sure. Yes, thank you for your words. I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, no, my pleasure. Okay, take care.
Thanks. Have a good day. You too.
Bye-bye.